No, I talked to him.
Okay, okay.
Oh, so sweet.
So ladies and gentlemen, we are going to begin the service in a moment. So if you could please go through the line and pay your condolences to the family, we appreciate that. So ladies and gentlemen, we are going to begin this service. If you could please take your seats at this time. Thank you. We ask that if you do have a cell phone or a pager, if you could please turn it off or at least to the silent mode during the service. We appreciate that very much for the family. Also, at the conclusion of the service today, the family will be having the interment at Shalom Memorial Park Cemetery, which is located in Arlington Heights. If you have a memorial folder, the address is in the folder. There will not be a formal procession from the sanctuary today. We will all meet at the cemetery at the conclusion of the service here. After the interment at Shalom, the family will be sitting Shiva, and that information is also in the memorial folder at David and Leslie's Abramson's residence with their address today following the interment until 9 p.m. and again on Thursday from 6 to 9. The service today will be conducted by Rabbi Paul Cohn.
I'm joined this afternoon by my colleagues, Rabbi Rachel Heaps and Cantor Amy Zussman, our Cantor Emerita. Before we continue with this memorial tribute of love to the life of Earl Abramson, there is a ritual that we perform. The ritual is called Kriya, a Hebrew word that literally means a tearing. It comes to us from the Torah, when Jacob is first told by his sons that his beloved Joseph has been killed. He tears the cloak that he is wearing. It's a sign of grief and sadness, to be sure, but also a sign of the confusion and sometimes even the anger that we feel when someone we love is taken from our midst. The Kriya ribbon, which we use today, also serves as an outward sign to those that you'll meet in the coming days that indeed there has been a tear in the fabric of your lives. And without having to say a word, people will know how to respond accordingly. I had the great privilege of knowing Earl for about 15 years plus. And I had the wonderful opportunity to sit with his family and to talk about his life. And although it is impossible to summarize 90 years of life and love within an hour and a half, the stories that were shared, the life that was so well lived, it brought me to one of my favorite midrashim, my favorite rabbinic stories. It's told of two friends who were accustomed to taking long walks together. And on one of these walks, they happened upon a harbor. And they stood watching the activity in the harbor, and they noticed that there was a cruise ship that was about to set sail. And there was tremendous fanfare, and people were singing and shouting, and streamers and music playing. And at exactly the same time, there was a ship coming back into port with no music, no fanfare, no singing, no celebration. And one friend turned to the other and said, "You know, this is exactly the opposite of what should be happening. That the ship that's about to set sail, we don't know what storms it might encounter along the way or whether it will even safely return to shore once again. But the cause for celebration is this other ship that has safely returned to port, navigating the challenges and the successes of the voyage." And the rabbis add to this is true of our lives as well. When a baby is born, there is much celebration, as of course there should be. But at the end of a person's life, particularly a life as well lived as Earl's life was, it is also a cause for celebration. And so we continue this tribute of love to his life, to his spirit, to his legacy, with the words of the psalmist, Shiviti Adonai lenegdi tamid, I have placed the eternal always before me.
Shiviti Adonai lenegdi tamid ki mimini balemot lachen samach libi vayagel kivodi af besari yishkon lavetach Ki lo tazov nafshi lishol lo titein chasid chalerot shachot torieni orach chaim Sova simachot et panecha neimot b'mincha netzach. Shiviti Adonai lenegdi tamid ki mimini
Death has taken our beloved Earl Bert Abramson. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence there is lamentation. In their tears there is loneliness. Lost in their sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, O God, and be with them. For Earl's love that united us in life and which death cannot sever. For his companionship that we shared along life's path and which continues through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of his heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness and is now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give our thanks to God. In this time of grief, we listen to the voice of our sacred scriptures that brings us the ever-new message of God's nearness. It teaches us of our kinship with the divine, in light as in darkness, in joy as in sorrow, in life as in death. Psalm 23, the Shepherd's Psalm.
Adonai roi lo echsar bino deshe yarbitzeni al me menuchot yenaleni nafshi shovev yeshovev yancheni v'magle tzedek yancheni v'magle tzedek leman shemo gam ki elech b'keit samavet lo hirara ki amatani shivtecha umishantecha hema yenachamuni taroch lefanai shulchan neged tzorerai dishanta vashem eroshi kosi revaya achtov chesed yirdifuni kol yemei chayai vishavti b'veit Adonai leorech yamim. Adonai roi lo echsar. Adonai roi lo echsar.
On the inside of our pamphlets, we read the translation of the 23rd Psalm together. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Earl was many things to many people: a devoted son, husband, a devoted father, grandfather, great-grandfather, a devoted friend. He was also a very successful business person, and successful not just in the profits of the business, but successful in creating relationships with the people with whom he worked, the people who depended upon him, and treating everyone as so very important. And as I was thinking about him and the stories that were shared with me, I was drawn to the words of Psalm 15, which I think speak very much to Earl's character. Adonai, who may abide in your house, who may dwell in your holy mountain? Those who are upright, who do justly, who speak the truth within their hearts, who do not slander others or wrong them or bring shame upon them, who scorn the lawless but honor those who revere God, who give their word and come what may do not retract, who do not exploit others, who do not take bribes. Those who live in this way shall never be shaken. In his sorrow, Job cried out, Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, yehi shem Adonai mevorach. God has given and God has taken away. Blessed be the name of God. An ancient people, we are well acquainted with grief in the valley of shadows. Death and sorrow are not strangers to us, yet the centuries have taught us that a good name endures beyond the grave, and that there is strength in faith. With Job, we say, Adonai natan, God, you have given. You gave us a loved one, Earl Abramson, who will not be forgotten. For all that was good and enduring in his life, we offer the deepest thanks of our hearts. Adonai lakach, God, you have taken away. We pray for the strength to turn our broken hearts into an altar of trust before which we acknowledge your sovereignty and your love, as we now say, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach. Blessed be the name of God, now and forever. Amen. I invite you to take these next few moments to call forward the cherished memories that each of you have of Earl's life and how his love touched each of our hearts in this moment of silent reflection.
May the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, be acceptable in your sight. God, our rock, our rock and our Redeemer, God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen.
As we continue this tribute of love, we're reminded that words that come from the heart go straight to the heart. And so I'd like to invite Sheila to come forward to share her words.
So many of us here in this sanctuary and watching online have had the great fortune to know Earl Abramson, an exceptional man, wise, capable, confident, savvy, and resilient. Others here today can speak more effectively than I can to Earl's success as the brilliant businessman and leader who understood everything necessary to make his business go and grow. I am certain that many of you know of Earl's philanthropy. I had the privilege of a front row seat, seeing how he put his philosophy of giving into action, essentially always supporting people, as he liked to say, not causes, people. Not only was Earl a man of great generosity, he also had an enormous capacity to love. Earl's life was filled with love, especially for his wife, his children, his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren, and their families. He loved his friends, many of whom were long-term friends. He loved the University of Michigan, go blue. And he loved me. Earl and I met later in life, after both of us had suffered excruciating losses. We met after he lost Sharon, his wife of 52 years, and after I lost Barry, my husband of 44 years. We are so grateful to our mutual friends, Marilyn and Bob, who brought us together, having recognized the potential for a loving relationship. We needed each other. We found each other. And now, after 15 years later, as wonderful, love-filled, adventurous, romantic, globe-trotting years of partnership later, I feel so blessed to have had the opportunity to share my life with this exceptional man. Today, as it turns out, is Valentine's Day. And we had a tradition of 15 years of expressing our love each Valentine's Day through love letters. So, Earl, this is my love letter to you. Thank you for bringing me into your heart and into your life.
I'd now like to call upon one of Earl's many lifelong friends, Josh Pace.
Good afternoon and greetings from Pasadena. I'm going to go back over 70 years. We met at ETHS, which is Evanston Township High School. I was living in Evanston, so that's where I went to school. And Earl had to pay tuition, living in Chicago, to come to ETHS because it was one of the best high schools in the area. We took an instant liking to each other and spent a lot of time together. Earl had a car, so it was easy to get together. And he liked coming to my house for dinner many times. He loved my mother, and he loved her cooking, except for one item. My mom would make borscht to start off every meal. I loved her borscht. Earl could not eat borscht. So we figured out a way where I would quickly finish my bowl. Then under the table, we would switch bowls and continued with the dinner. I don't think my mother ever discovered that. Once we started dating, we double dated all the time. I was going with a girl that had a good friend, which she met, I believe, at camp. She introduced her to Earl, and that became his wife. In 1956, January, they were married. I stood up for them. December of the same year, Janice and I married, and Earl stood up for us. We were in service at the time. Earl was stationed in Texas, in San Antonio. And somehow or other, he managed to, by himself, lose an entire field hospital. We never found out how he was able to accomplish that. In the meantime, I was finishing flight school in Enid, Oklahoma, and then we were sent to San Antonio, where we were put together with our 5-man crew to fly the KC-97, which is a mid-air refueling plane. We had a great 3 months living in San Antonio, spending so much time together. And even Don Schauberger was there for the National Guard, and we spent some time with him. It was during this time that their first son was born, David. Earl would go to the hospital during the day to visit with his wife and with his son. Then he would come back to our apartment where he'd climb into bed with us. I remember going to the hospital. We were standing outside the nursery looking at all the babies, And standing next to Janice was Earl's mother-in-law, who pointed to one of the babies and said, "Look at that beautiful baby." Standing next to her was a woman that said, "Thank you, that's my grandson." She never lived that down. In 1959, we're out of service, back home in Chicago, bought our first homes. Earl bought a home in Wilmette. We bought a home in Northbrook. We had two other couples that we were close with and formed a bridge group, which met on a regular basis, and we also did some local traveling. Then, in 1964, I was offered a job in Los Angeles. Now, when I was 16 years old, that was the one trip I made out to Los Angeles, and I fell in love with that country. The mountains, the deserts, the ocean, the outside living. So I moved my family to Pasadena. Now, during the rest of our lives, we led two completely different lives. Earl was working hard running the family business. They spent lots of time at their country club, played lots of golf, and became extremely philanthropic. They are the most philanthropic people we have ever known. Our lifestyle revolved around our temple, where we made many new friends, and all holidays we would go out camping, and we spent a lot of time up in the backcountry of Sequoia, backpacking and fishing. In spite of our different lives, in spite of the thousands of miles between us, Earl, they came out for all of our family events. We came to Chicago for all of their family events. Despite these differences, there's one thing that has remained constant throughout. That's our love for each other and our love for each of our families. The last time we saw Earl is when they came out last July for my 90th birthday celebration. It's one of the few times that Earl was willing to stay at our home. And for a week, he, unaided, climbed the 17 stairs up to the bedrooms without any problem whatsoever. I want you to know that we will dearly miss Earl, but we will thank you so much for all the beautiful memories you are leaving with us. I now see Earl walking straight, unaided, without any back pain, which he lived with since a little kid in a traffic accident. Thank you. Janice, did you want to say anything?
I now look to call upon daughter Cindy. Yeah, please. Yeah, absolutely fine.
That was great. So I'm, sorry. I'm Cindy. I'm Earl's daughter. Sorry about my voice. I stand before you with a very heavy heart. The last 4 months have been very challenging, but gratefully, it was a very small portion of my dad's beautiful and full life. First, I want to thank Team Earl, my brothers, David, who went to every doctor's appointment, kept everything straight, Mark, who visited Dad so often, Sheila, who supported my dad in every possible way she was able, and Brad, Sheila's son, for being there with us at the most difficult times. Thank you for your devotion and your unyielding support. My dad liked to remind us that his parents sent him to military school for 2 years. And whether or not it was from that experience, he was organized and disciplined in many aspects of his life. One example is that he did not believe in offering unsolicited advice. So most of the life lessons that he taught us were by example. Relationships were very important to my dad. He told me it was because he grew up as an only child and felt alone because of it. He and my mom, who also was an only child, surrounded themselves with many friends. And they had a handful of devoted, lifelong friends, as you've met some, and others who are here today. He showed us how to make friends, nurture these treasured relationships forever. Dad and his friends traveled back and forth, as you heard, across the country to celebrate and support one another for every milestone and simcha for more than 70 years. My father and mother had a beautiful marriage for 52 years. It was an exceptional example to emulate for us. They had unyielding respect for each other, accompanied by sincere caring and gentleness. If they had a difference of an opinion on a subject that was important to my mom, my dad would defer to her absolutely because of that respect. And the reverse was also true. They were each other's better half and each other's best cheerleaders. When they entered a room, it was evident how in love they were by how my dad looked at my mom. He treated her like a queen, doting on her in many ways. I interviewed my dad 12 years ago about his life, a true keepsake. And he said, and I quote, "Mom was the most phenomenal wife and mom that any husband or kids could have. As soon as I met her, I didn't feel alone anymore. She was my life." They were deeply in love until Valentine's Day 2008, when my mom passed away. My dad told us he thought his life was over when he met her. But despite the suffering of overwhelming grief, he decided he didn't want his grief to affect the rest of his life. And perhaps not surprisingly, considering his disciplined nature, soon after my mom's passing, he started on a search to find a new partner. And when he met Sheila, the sun began to shine again. They quickly fell in love and were grateful for the companionship and the love that they shared. They were wonderful partners for more than 15 years. How incredibly lucky for them to have found each other and to be given a second chance at love. It was a gift. My father was a hard worker and a wonderful provider. He never came home before 8 o'clock, but no matter the hour, we always had family dinner together. We connected, we shared our day, we played various games, and sometimes we even sang the Abramson game. This always ended with laughter and banging on the table. I have continued the daily family dinner tradition for my family, and we still gather every Sunday. We were the fortunate recipients of his hard work. We lived in a beautiful house, we went on special vacations, and we were able to go to any college of our choice, assuming it wasn't in California. Too far. Afraid we'd never return. Yeah, look, we were given everything we needed and every opportunity to succeed. But with that said, he did not overindulge, therefore teaching us to appreciate and be grateful for what we had. We were and are a very lucky family. One of my dad's greatest lessons to us was giving back to the community. It was very important to him. And I read through many of the speeches that he delivered to his many organizations when receiving accolades and found this very apropos selection. He said, "We learned early on to make the world a better place by giving of ourselves through volunteerism and through philanthropy." He wanted to pass on this very special concept to the next generations. He continued to say, "I'd like to pass along a message to our grandchildren who were very young at the time of this speech. Scott, Jacqueline, Dana, Jordan, Tamara, Rebecca, Jeremy, and Kira, a message that we hope you will come to understand with help from your parents, the importance of volunteering and giving back." He said, "We have been blessed with good fortune, good health, and an outstanding, close, and loving family. And now we're afforded the opportunity of experiencing the great joy of being able to share our blessings. And in other words, the great joy of giving. These words of gratitude and giving back were delivered to his children and grandchildren through his actions over many years. This was his greatest legacy. And you can see it was no accident. Dad lived his life with integrity, honesty, loyalty, and gratitude. He was a great role model. So my dad, he loved his friends. Each one of you were so special to him. He loved to travel to faraway places. He loved to search for and collect glass art. He loved to play golf. He loved to go out for dinner and drink a good Cabernet. But on the top of his list of all the things that he loved was his family. You all meant everything to him. He was so proud of your accomplishments and the individual people you have become. We all gathered just a month ago for my dad's 90th birthday. He could not have been happier to be surrounded by his whole family for the weekend. This was the perfect send-off, but who knew? My father was ready to go in the end. He was very appreciative of his life, and he was ready to be reunited with his beloved Sharon. I will miss you, and I love you.
David?
So last week, as we sat in the ICU, the doctors made it very clear to us that Dad was a very sick guy with way too much wrong with him. To them, another old guy whose time had come. They deemed it best to move this along, and they needed the bed. But Dad wasn't just another old guy. He's a guy that lived an extremely full life and leaves a complex legacy, a legacy that is times bewildering and at other times magical. Let me explain. A friend of Dad's once told me that Dad was born to parents that probably should not have had children. Digest his childhood memories. As a little boy, he recounted being sent out to play. His mother would tie him to a tree, and his playground was as far as the rope would stretch. At 5, he was sent to overnight camp. At 14, he was sent away to military school, or as Cindy says, he called it reform school. Although maybe deserved, as he and his friend Teddy had recently burned down the cabana at Green Acres with fireworks. His parents loved him, they really did, but warmth and displays of affection were not a common occurrence. It seems that he found his first love when he went to college at the University of Michigan. He thrived there as a dual major, owned his first business, a flower delivery company, and met and developed an incredible lifelong friendship with Simi. His affection for that place was contagious, and he returned for alumni weekends into his 80s. Simultaneously, back home, he met Josh and Janice, along with Don, more lifelong friends. He loved these friends, the brothers and sisters he never had. For these friendships and many more that Dad would develop over the years, loyalty was paramount. Loyalty, a key tenet of Dad's life. He would do absolutely anything for these people. Next came the second love of his life, the true love of his life, Mom. Another only child who came from a different kind of family. Hers was strong in Jewish identity with parents who doted upon her and exhibited warmth and love religiously. A dichotomy. And they would play to their strengths and childhood learnings over the next 50 years. Mom would focus exclusively on family. Raising her kids was her full-time job. Dad would focus on everything else. That's what he knew. For the next couple of decades, the focus was on his third love, Rapid, a business that his father started when Dad was 4 years old. He started working there, I think, at about 11, sweeping the floors. Probably, except for the college flower business, the only job he ever had. This is where he was in his element, where he thrived. He grew that business based upon a very special culture that he created and insisted upon. A culture of loyalty, hard work, maniacal client focus, honesty. Do what you say you're going to do, exceed client expectations, honor, challenge, and take care of your employees. And you know what? The people who work for him loved that culture, and they thrived also, and many of them spent their entire careers with the company. 10 and 20-year careers? He ran a business where his employees felt so fulfilled that they stayed 30, 40, 50, and even 60 years. In 2013, the company celebrated its 75th anniversary. We had a huge party at the Field Museum for current retired employees. It was one of the most special days of his life. He spoke that night with incredible pride. Those people in attendance represented part of his legacy, and he was going to enjoy every moment. And as you Rapid folks know, Dad was quite a mentor for me. His teachings focused on philosophies of leadership, ethics, culture, those defining aspects of a business, generally done quietly, out of the range of others. Two very strong personalities with somewhat different go-forward strategies, but we figured it out. Now, last week while in the hospital, Sheila's son, Brad, asked me if there were any Earlisms. One was, you should always write checks, but the most significant impact you can make in your community is with your time and effort. He started to fulfill that ism as school board chairman at Beth Hillel Synagogue. A good start for the time, a young 30-something-year-old. Propitiously, he would meet and hire Zev Weiss, the school board director. Zev was a 3 concentration camp survivor who had a dream. One evening I came downstairs and there were a bunch of Wilmette people in the family room. They were meeting to develop Zev's dream, and they would elect Dad as chairman of the Holocaust Education Foundation. Over the next 40 years or so, this foundation became a preeminent worldwide resource for Holocaust education. Leading Holocaust educators from around the world would attend their annual or biannual conferences, mostly at Northwestern, but also other universities. Their initial focus was on rolling out curricula to US universities. Next, they went worldwide. As these founders all entered their 80s, they were looking to expand to high schools. They also recognized that they needed to protect their baby, and they endowed the foundation to Northwestern University under the care of Professor Peter Hayes. And when they did so, Dad was still the chairman, a 40-year legacy of loyalty and performance. Whilst all of this was happening, doctor friends of Dad enticed him to the board of Skokie Valley Hospital. Next, he was elected vice chair. Next, Earlism. Never take the top volunteer job at a nonprofit. Well, 1 week after he was elected vice chair, the chairman died of a heart attack, and Dad was now the reluctant number one. At the time, the hospital was nicknamed Death Valley Hospital. It had a lousy reputation. But Dad and his doctor buddies set out to fix that, and they did just that. He hired and mentored senior staff that would move on to jobs at large medical centers. He would engineer the relationship with Rush as Rush North Shore and help with the eventual sale of the institution to the North Shore system, as then a well-respected hospital in the community. And when they did so, Dad had served on that board, for 27 years, 9 as chairman. And if you happen to be there, go visit the Earl and Sharon Abramson boardroom, named in recognition of his incredible efforts and accomplishments. That naming event was another incredibly proud day in his life. While he was pursuing this life of accomplishment, Mom and Dad, then Sheila, his fourth love and Dad, found plenty of time to travel the world, socialize with tons of friends, and he played lots of golf. He found new charities in Florida to support. He lived life hard. He left nothing on the table. So, I'd like to sum up his legacy and use a couple of recent conversations with him to help do so. A few weeks ago, he said to me, "Isn't it incredible that for me and Mom, 2 only children, we made this wonderful family of you 3 kids and 6 grandchildren and 9 great-grandchildren?" I said, "Dad, yep, it's amazing, but you have 8 grandchildren. But I won't ask you which 2 you don't remember." My message is that he was proud of all of you. Yeah, there wasn't a lot of warmth and even time invested. He didn't know how. He cared in his own way. He observed from afar and wanted what was best for all of you. And for Mom and him, there are now 29 of us, and we have it figured out. Each of us in our own way, and now you know why he was so proud. Also recently, in a separate conversation, he recounted the impact that he felt he had made on the world. Not to brag, he didn't do that. It was more recognition that time was short, and he was reflecting. Think about that impact. There are thousands and thousands of people, maybe tens and tens of thousands, or who knows how many people in this world that have benefited from his effort. Most will never know him or have heard of him, but their lives are better because of him. So my last Earlism. 40 or so years ago, I sat in his office, and he was mentoring, maybe lecturing me, by saying that, when they bury you, they won't talk about how much money you made, but they will talk about the way you conducted your life. So, Dad, as we bury you, we simply say, well done.
how he lived his life. Yes. 3 wonderful children shared, brought into this world with Sharon, the love of his life, for 52 years. David and his Leslie, Cindy and her Larry, Mark and his Debbie. The grandchildren, Scott and his Brittany, Jacqueline and her Eric, Dana and her Jared, Jordan and Aaron, Tamara and David, Rebecca, Jeremy, Kira. Did I get all 8 of them? And Dina. Thank you. That's why I always like. And the great-grandchildren, Jacob, Abby, Scarlett, Sebastian, Dawson, Jackson, Madison, Layla, and Noah. I got all of them? A wonderful legacy continued with Sheila. As I was thinking and reflecting on the words shared this afternoon, brought to the Torah portion for this week, which is Truma. And it's the beginning of the instructions that the children of Israel were given about building the Mishkan, a portable sanctuary, a dwelling place, not a house of God or a house for God, but a project that was meant to bring community together, meant to bring family together. And after the many commands that were already given to the Israelites up to this point, this project was voluntary. Moses is instructed by God to bring forward everyone whose heart so moves them, to contribute their time, their talent, their resources to this project. I imagine that if Earl had been there, he would have been the first in line to donate his time, his talent, his resources, and then he would step back because he wasn't in it for the recognition, for the honor. He was in it because it was the right thing to do. It made the world better. He was overwhelmingly generous in every aspect of his life, making the world better, bringing the spirit of an entrepreneur to everything that he did. Everyone counted in Earl's life. Everyone, family and friends, and they knew that. In a vivid and memorable statement, our sages utilized a phrase in which the type of personality that Judaism values is described. They tell us, Kol hamorid dma'ot al adam kasher hakadosh baruch hu sofran uminyan beveit genuzav. The tears shed at the passing of an adam kasher are so precious in the eyes of God that God counts each of them and stores each of them in a treasure house. Our sages did not use the expression Adam Chashuv, an important person, or Adam Godol, a great person. Instead, our sages coined a most unusual phrase, Adam Kasher, a term which is virtually untranslatable into English. We know what the word kasher means when it's applied to food. However, what does the term kasher mean when it is applied to a person? What sort of a person did our sages have in mind when they said that God's self, mourns their passing? When the term kasher is applied to a person, it seems to mean a person of integrity, a good person, a person who lives a life in the spirit of Judaism, a life of closeness to family, of service to community, and of reverence for God. Earl Abramson was such a person, an Adam Kasher. You know that he was born in Chicago, the only child of Jules and Helen, both of blessed memory, making, as you know, many lifelong friendships along the way. One of those friends, Teddy, decided that they should he and Earl decided they should go to college together, but each had a different idea of where they should go, and the compromise was the University of Michigan. You heard a bit about the flower business, ostensibly for fraternity and sorority dances. He met his beloved Sharon. She was just 18 when they met. He was a junior in college. You heard about their mutual friend that brought them together. He was a bit put off by the distance to Oak Park, but made it work and overcame that. And their very first date was at EJ's. And they, no? Your first date was at EJ's. Where was their first date? Not at EJ's. They did have a first date and shared a life of love for 52 years together. They were married just after he graduated, and he served a grateful nation in the Army stateside. I didn't know about him losing the whole hospital, but it was shared with me that he did oftentimes wonder, me, Earl Abramson, with a gun. For 52 years, Sharon and Earl were each other's everything. Their parents remained important parts of their lives, for as they celebrated holidays together with their own growing family, he rejoiced as his children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren came into his life as well. As you know, they moved to Wilmette after living for a while with Sharon's parents. They would enjoy many happy times in Florida with the family over winter and spring breaks. Earl loved Florida. He was very handy and could fix most anything, sometimes with an expletive to add to the energy of the project, and was once given a Mr. Fix-It t-shirt by friends in the neighborhood. Sharon came from a very observant home. Earl, not so much. But they found their spiritual home together at Beth Hillel, where he became very active there, as you've heard. It was their social hub. The children received their religious education there. Sharon and Earl did everything together: golf, tennis, bridge, world travel. Most of their friends were couples as well. He loved the finer things in life, to be sure, but he also could be extremely thrifty. Just ask about his collection of golf balls. He made special effort to connect with his grandchildren, taking each of them on a trip to the Dells. Some are fortunate to find love once in a lifetime. Earl was twice blessed. After the devastating loss of Sharon and Sheila's tragic loss of her Barry, Earl and Sheila were matched by friends and made an instant connection and had their first date at EJ's. They were so good for each other. And Sheila shared that her first trip with Earl was actually a cruise with his entire family. Though very proud of all that he was able to do in his 90 years, he was loath to talk about it. He never gave with the desire to be recognized. He did it because he could, and he wanted to make the world better. As we look back over the years and review the life of this Adam Kasher, this good, this honest, this helpful and generous person, we feel, of course, impelled to shed a tear at his departure. But we can find comfort in the knowledge that these tears are so precious in the sight of the Almighty that God will count them and will store them in God's treasure house. May the memory of Earl Abramson continue to be a blessing to all of us who are privileged to have been touched by his life. And to this let us say, Amen. We invite you now to rise as you are able for the memorial prayer, El Malei Rachamim.
El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Hamtzeh Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, Im Kedoshim Utorim, Kizohar Harakim, המזהירים את נשמת יצחק שהלך לעולמו. בעל הרחמים יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים. ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר אמן.
On the inside of our pamphlets, the translation of Elma Le Rachamim. O God, full of compassion, thou who dwellest on high, grant perfect rest beneath the sheltering wings of thy presence, among the holy and pure who shine as the brightness of the firmament unto the soul of Earl Bert Abramson, who has gone unto eternity. Lord of mercy, bring him under the cover of thy wings, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. Be thou his possession, and may his repose be peace. Amen.